Hey, 42 here. Does the Pope shit in the woods? Is a very, very rude example of a malaphor, a mixing of two idioms with the same meaning to make a brand new idiom, usually for comedic purposes. In this case, the original idioms are, is the Pope Catholic? And does a bear shit in the woods? With the answer to both questions being a resounding yes. But what, I wonder, is the answer to the malaphor these idioms create? Does the Pope shit in the woods? No, probably not. But then, according to the Palmarian Church, he doesn't relieve himself in a plush marble-lined toilet in the Vatican either. Okay, this is one of the weirdest intros to a topic I've ever come up with, so before this video is derailed completely, maybe we should put this question to one side just for now and start at the beginning. Which, in this case, is the spring of 1968 near the sleepy town of El Palmar de Troya in Spanish Andalusia. It was the 30th of March to be exact, on a stretch of farmland where 4 Spanish schoolgirls were picking flowers when a beautiful lady appeared to them in a vision. Now, we all know that children have very active imaginations, but the local adults decided to take this particular bit of make-believe seriously. Why? Well, Spain is, on the whole, a deeply religious country, with around 70% of the population considering themselves Catholic. And if you say the words visions and beautiful lady to a Catholic, they're only going to come to one conclusion. The schoolgirls had been visited by an apparition of the Virgin Mary herself. This was understandably big news for the local Catholics, and a large group of them flocked to the site in the hope of getting themselves a big old slice of divine hallucination pie. And they were in luck. The Virgin Mary was to show up several more times in the coming weeks and months, appearing to various different people in the area around El Palmar de Troya. If you're wondering exactly what the Mother of Christ was up to wandering around the Spanish countryside, intermittently revealing herself to the local faithful, it seemed she had come to deliver a message. She felt that modern Catholicism was becoming too soft, and good Catholics should return to the religion's earlier, stricter traditions. The timing of this guidance was particularly apt, coming as it did just a few years after the conclusion of the Second Vatican Council in 1965, which was basically a 3-year discussion that eventually saw the Catholic Church relax some of its stricter rules in favour of what was considered a more progressive approach. It was seen as a positive step forward by many, but at least according to the visions coming out of El Palmar de Troya at the time, the Virgin Mary did not approve. One man who appeared in the Andalusian countryside in the aftermath of these visions was a Roman Catholic by the name of Clemente Dominguez y Gomez, an insurance broker from Seville. If rumours are to be believed, Clemente was known in the local Seville gay scene as Lavalito, the she-vault, suggesting he hadn't exactly been following his religion to the letter up till that point. But all that was about to change when Clemente had his own divine visitation, a vision of Jesus Christ and Saint Pio of Pietrelcina. This vision came a full year after Clemente first made his pilgrimage to the site, but from that point on it seems like he really got the hang of it, and his second vision, which involved the Virgin Mary, came just 2 months later. Clemente claimed these visions revealed to him that both Freemasons and communists were in the process of infiltrating the Catholic Church, and that the Pope at the time, Paul VI, was no longer running the show in the Vatican, but was in fact being held hostage by corrupt cardinals. It was also around this time that Clemente reported, and very publicly displayed, stigmata, wounds on his body mirroring those suffered by Jesus during the crucifixion, bloodied palms and feet, a wide gash in his side, and even scratches on his forehead from the crown of thorns. Perhaps, unsurprisingly, it was at this point the Catholic Church started to feel like things were getting a little out of hand. The Archbishop of Seville came out to formally denounce the visions of El Palmar de Troya, suggesting they were a form of collective hysteria and advising that they were not to be taken seriously. He even went as far as to forbid Roman Catholics from visiting the area and banning all acts of worship there. It's all fun and apparitions until people start bleeding to death. But the site continued to attract tens of thousands of pilgrims, both from Spain and far beyond in the years that followed, during which time Clemente successfully styled himself as the principal seer of visions there. In 1975, following instructions he claims to have received in visions from both Jesus and Mary, who I'm assuming by now he was on first name terms with, Clemente Dominguez y Gomez officially founded a brand new schismatic Catholic group called the Order of Carmelites of the Holy Face. But there was one small problem. Clemente, remember, was an insurance broker, which kind of undermined the validity of the new, austere Catholicism he was peddling. The good old Catholics amongst you will of course know that usury is a sin. But it didn't take him long to find a solution to this little issue in the form of Roman Catholic Archbishop Ngo Dinh To, older brother of the former president of South Vietnam, who had been assassinated in the run-up to the Vietnam War a few years earlier. Convinced by the righteousness of Clemente's cause, Ngo Dinh To officially ordained him, an act that would get the Archbishop excommunicated by the Vatican. A year later, this strange tale took a turn for the even stranger. I wonder if the Pope listens to Audible. I'm sure he does. Either way, they sponsored this video. I've been an Audible listener for years, and it offers me something physical books never can: freedom. As a voracious consumer of non-fiction books, Audible gives me the freedom to learn anywhere at any time. Whether I'm driving, exercising, or washing the dishes. Try doing that last one with a physical book, and you'll end up with soggy pages and disappointment. Believe me. There's nothing else like Audible for spoken word entertainment and audiobooks. From bestsellers to new releases, they have it all. And now Audible is better than ever before, with the all-new Plus catalogue. All members have access to the growing Plus catalogue, with thousands of select audiobooks, podcasts, Audible originals, and more, included with membership. Members also get 1 credit every month, good for any title in the entire premium selection, regardless of price, to keep forever. I've recently been thoroughly enjoying the Audible original From the Oast House, the Alan Partridge podcast. It's had me in stitches all week, and my lovely American viewers out there, if you want a first-class taste of British humour, this is it. It doesn't get much better. You can start exploring Audible with a free 30-day trial now through my special link, audible.com/42. Or simply text 42 to 500 500 to jump right in. In a twist of fate so ironic, it kinda makes you wonder whether he might have found himself on the wrong end of some bona fide divine retribution. The self-styled mystical seer lost his non-mystical eyesight in a car accident. And he wasn't just blinded, his injuries were so severe, his eyeballs had to be removed. After recovering from his wounds, Clemente refused to wear eye patches of any kind, and would appear in public for the rest of his days, empty eye sockets gazing out across his congregation. Jesus Christ. A few years later, on the 6th of August 1978, Pope Paul VI died. It isn't entirely clear whether Clemente still thought the Pope was locked in a cupboard as a hostage somewhere in the Vatican at this point, but either way, it was the trigger he'd been waiting for. He was finally ready to execute his plans for religious domination. In a formal announcement, he explained he was no longer to be known as Clemente Dominguez y Gomez, former insurance broker from Seville, but as Pope Gregory XVII, one true ruler not just of the Order of the Carmelites of the Holy Face, but of the entire Catholic Church. It turned out Jesus Christ himself, along with Saints Peter and Paul, had personally popped down to crown him as Pope in yet another handy vision. The Order of Carmelites of the Holy Face became the Palmarian Church, which, according to Pope Gregory XVII, had now replaced the power and might of the Vatican and the imposter Pope who resided there. You hear that, Francis, you tiny old fraudster? The Catholic Church took this news about as well as you would expect, denouncing the Palmarian Church and its leaders, seeing it for what it was. The blind leading the clueless. There's another Malifaux for you. But in his new position as anti-pope, Gregory XVII realised that two could play at that game. Keen to wield his newfound popey powers, he set about excommunicating pretty much everyone he could think of. The actual pope, newly appointed John Paul II, was up first, of course, and next came those mischievous cardinals responsible for all that hostage business. Then there was the Spanish royal family, all socialists and communists, all believers of false religions. You get the picture. Basically, as far as the anti-pope, formerly known as Clemente Dominguez y Gomez, was concerned, if you weren't part of the Palmarian Church, you could go fuck yourself. Getting the hang of his new job, Gregory XVII made himself 24 new cardinals in the space of a single day. Then set about making a list of all his favourite people from history and canonising them as saints. First up was Christopher Columbus. If you want to learn more about how he didn't quite discover the New World, then check out my video on that subject, linked in the description. And then came Francisco Franco. You probably know him as General Franco, the fascist dictator who led Spain through one of its darkest periods between 1939 and 75. There were even rumours Hitler had made the shortlist, but it seems even anti-Pope Gregory XVII drew the line somewhere, even if that somewhere was way, way off in the distance. Now, we've all heard plenty of stories about fringe religious sects and strange cults that get up to all sorts, from a bit of basement buggery to the odd ritualistic murder. I've told you about a few of them on the channel myself. Most of the time these groups are led by deluded crackpots and megalomaniacs. Outside of their followers, who are typically lost, desperate and vulnerable individuals, they have no real power or influence. But not only did the Palmarian Church amass several thousand followers both in Spain and around the world, they also managed to get their hands on one hell of a lot of cash whilst they were at it. And I mean a lot of cash. Enough to build a mini Vatican City on the site where the original visions of the Virgin Mary had taken place, for starters. The Cathedral Basilica of Our Crowned Mother of Palmar is a colossal structure complete with huge domes and no fewer than 8 towers, and it's thought to have cost upwards of 16 million euros to build. No expense was spared elsewhere either. Palmarian Church cardinals and bishops deck themselves out in enough bling to make P. Diddy jealous. Senior members of the church get around in top-of-the-line BMWs, and the grand interior of the cathedral looks like King Midas himself came home drunk one night and crashed into pretty much everything whilst looking for somewhere to throw up. Truth be told, nobody knows exactly where the cash from all these extravagances came from to this day. But it's thought that the anti-pope managed to secure some seriously hefty donations from wealthy supporters during extensive travels around the world. Whether you're a believer or not, you'd probably have to admit that modern religions are, by and large, really rather welcoming to outsiders, often doing important work in the community and just generally trying to be nice to people. Not so the Palmarian Church. If you were to visit the Cathedral Basilica of Our Crowned Mother of Palmar, you would not be met by a friendly church representative offering you brochures and a cup of tea, but by a 5-meter concrete fence barred by a giant iron door and topped with CCTV cameras. Rumour has it there isn't even a doorbell. Rules within the compound are incredibly strict, dictating what the people within can eat, wear, watch, say, do, think, and feel. There are stories of brutal self-flagellation and severe punishment for misdemeanors. Members of the church aren't even allowed to talk to non-Palmarians who break any of the myriad rules, and those who choose to leave the church are immediately excommunicated. You won't be surprised to hear that plenty of controversy has come to light about the cult, religion, over the years. To name but a few, we have abuse, psychological and physical, money laundering, intimidation, and even the odd mysterious death that's occurred behind those high walls. Clemente, that is Pope Gregory XVII himself, was accused of sexual misconduct by several of his priests and nuns in the 90s, charges which he would later admit to. You might think revelations like these would be the end of a fringe sect like the Palmarians, but somehow, they are still going strong. Well, maybe not strong, but they're still going at least. When their founder and leader, Anti-Pope Gregory XVII, died in 2005, the group didn't disintegrate as so many have before. No, Clemente had lined up his best mate, Manuel Corral, to rule over the Catholic world in his stead as Pope Peter II. No doubt, as a thank you, Anti-Pope Peter II's first task was to canonize his old pal Clemente as a saint, naming him as Pope Saint Gregory XVII the Very Great. The very was overkill, if you ask me, but hey, these guys don't do things by halves. Peter II was somewhat more reserved than his predecessor and never did claim to have any divine visions. He did, however, bring his own brand of batshit crazy to the job, announcing that the Antichrist had been born in the year 2000 and would make his very first public appearance at the age of 12 when he would mock Christ, before becoming the Antichrist proper at the age of 30. I suppose you do need a bit of experience under your belt if you're going to take on such a senior role in the destruction of all mankind. Personally, if I was going to make some grand prediction, I'd have picked something a good few thousand years in the future to eliminate any chance of looking like a Wally when it didn't come true. But I guess Anti-Pope Peter II was just that confident on this one. Out of interest, I did a quick internet search for famous people born in the year 2000 who made their first public appearance at the age of 12. I found two possible candidates. American actor Jace Lee Norman, born in March 2000 and known for playing the main character in Nickelodeon's Henry Danger. He got his big break at age 12 in Disney's series Jessie. The second candidate, the Neville Longbottom of this prophetic pair, if you will, is Samuel Sevian, a chess prodigy who became the youngest American ever to earn the title International Master at the age of 12 years and 10 months. So far as I know, neither of these two has ever publicly dissed Christ, but it's probably worth keeping an eye on them just in case. You never can be too careful when it comes to the end of days. There have been two further anti-popes since Peter II passed away back in 2011. Despite coming up with an undeniably inventive new religion, the Palmarians apparently aren't the most imaginative bunch when it comes to names. Peter II was followed by Gregory XVIII, and after him came Peter III. It feels a bit like one of those maths series you used to get into school. I guess we can all look forward to Gregory XIX next, right? Incidentally, Gregory XVIII was the first and only Palmarian pope so far to resign from his position rather than relinquish it on his death. The reason for hanging up his mitre once and for all? He'd lost his faith, having come to the startling conclusion that the Palmarian Church was one big scam. Who'd have thought it? Somehow, Peter III rules over all of Catholicism to this day from his very own little Vatican in El Palmar de Troya, Andalusia. And whilst the number of Palmarians has dwindled over the last 40 years, there are a fair few faithful who swear their allegiance to him, even now. Which is why, the next time someone asks you, does the Pope shit in the woods? You know exactly how to answer. Which Pope? Thanks for watching. Thanks again to Audible for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to check them out using the link in the description below. Thank you.